Chapter 21, New Earth Below Us. As I waited for the computer to acknowledge my inputs, I intently looked for any signs of civilization or ruins in the rest of the northern hemisphere. I had noticed some geologic activity which indicated an active geological process. Then I seen where two continents, similar to what South America and Africa looked like as a comparison, had been once joined, so I knew there were plate tectonics happening. In my mind, there was part of me that was leaning more and more at the same time while longing for a closer look at a landing. I was also thinking that it would be nice to feel gravity again, even if it was only for a short time. I waited and watched for any signs of human activity, but from this height and the amount of ground we had to cover made that difficult. Also, because this planet was much larger than our Earth, it was a big chore just looking it all over. After all the stress we went through, we were tapped. The time came to switch to the southern hemisphere, which meant that this planet had a 26-hour cycle compared to Earth, and that's when we decided to sleep as our machine worked, or at least I did. I believe Amy was already there. I unhooked the netting that kept us in bed and rehooked it as I floated in. I woke Amy gently by stimulating her sensitive spots with kisses, but she had to tell me with urgency about her experience as she meditated while I was above in the bridge. Okay, I'll stop, I said. Tell me what you figured out. I keep getting that it was an Enoch and that we already know what had happened in this solar system. I know what that is, I said. Okay, what happened, she asked. The fallen ones were kicked out of the first heaven into the second, which would be this universe. And this particular planetary system, it runs with the order of the creation. The third heaven is the atmosphere of our planet. That is where they were finally exiled to because of their sins and because they had caused our sins. We were both fallen types of creatures. I'm feeling that they destroyed Kepler F, she said, but for some reason weren't allowed on this planet. Well, that sounds about right, since it's still here and looks good and fits what's written also. They could have done the right thing and went anywhere, but they elected to destroy other beings out of jealousy. They are now trapped on Earth. That's why they couldn't follow us out. Makes sense? Seems right, she said. So why are they so frightening looking? In Enoch, it is told that they weren't always so ugly. They started out as beautiful angels, but were transformed into what was in their hearts. Kind of like a mark, similar to what happened to Cain. Do you think that they wiped out every living person and creature on that planet? Don't know about all that. Planet, yes, sure looks like it. They must have been taking every energy source out of it that they could. How do you know this, she asked. Logic now mostly, and from reading Enoch. I don't know for sure if all of it is right, but we haven't seen one unidentified object yet. But there are swarms of them on Earth and near Earth. I think it explains it pretty well. What else did you get from your quiet time, I asked. I also feel that it would be explained more in detail later, or that we will learn more later. That's about all. Then she asked me, How come you believe me so easily about the gateway to heaven?" I thought about it and then answered, "I have no reason not to, since I have seen it too. I just never mentioned it before either, because I was revealing enough in the beginning of this project and it wasn't relevant at the time, and I didn't want to sway you in any way when you checked it. I guess to prove it one more time to myself too. Here's the odd thing. As I think about it, that gateway has been viewed by others, and they all have said it has a record of all knowledge in the universe, the Akashic record. You are not the first to say that. I knew you weren't dreaming it up." "So now what? What are we going to do next?" she asked. "Rest, because soon we are going to be busy examining this planet at a closer altitude. We need some gravity. What do you think?" "I think we are blessed," she answered. "We are, my love." As she said this, she fell out with the cutest little snore. I lay there thinking, all this was so stressful, and we worked our brains so much it was like office work, but for days at a time, with very little stress-free sleep. It was exhausting brain work, let alone to even be in this position with fear to start with. We had come to terms with all of this, but I couldn't help but to feel we would be exposed to many more unknowns yet to come. So we rested now, not knowing if sleep was going to be a normal routine anymore till we reached home. My nerves jingled and twitched as I fell asleep. When that happens, you know you're tired. We woke about 6 hours later, and I quickly went up to the bridge to see where our progress was. The scanning was done and we were just orbiting. Amy woke soon after. We were both well rested enough, and so we cleaned ourselves and ate again, then watched the scenery passing by as we had done before. We had done all that we could from here for science. It was time to do something different, so I asked if she was ready to drop out of orbit and get a closer look. She said she was, so I took our craft off of auto and turned around and caught up with the rotational speed of the planet and entered manually and slowly lowered the repelling force, and we started to descend slowly. It was such a great advantage to be able to do this, something our space administration was lacking. Our magnetic field was also protecting us from any heat, even though it was at a minimum at this speed. As we went down, we recorded the changes in temperatures of the atmosphere and kept the cameras going. Now gravity was starting to make a difference in our craft and on us. We could only look at each other with anticipation as we felt ourselves feeling our weight coming back as we sank into our seats. Our telescope revealed a pristine landscape that was untouched and rather wild looking. It seemed to us that the trees were enormous, and not only were there conifers, but deciduous trees of great heights. They looked the same as Earth's, but slightly different, like they were from a long gone time back in Earth's prehistoric past. When we got to within 1,000 feet of the surface, we opened up the landing pads and let them unfold. The conifers reminded me of the giant redwoods and firs of the northwest Pacific coast, and there were trees that reminded us of Sydney, Australia's hidden canyons. Rainforests once covered most of the ancient southern supercontinent Gondwana, and there were primitive plants found in these forests in Australia that are linked to these growing more than 100 million years ago. This was kind of the same thing. The Daintree rainforest in North Queensland is the oldest tropical rainforest on Earth, dating back 135 million years. This is the area where Magic Square was from. He showed me this, which I was not aware of till then, and it was simply amazing. Now we were looking at a whole world that was similar in a stunning, somehow ancient beauty. Amy was excited and eager to know all that we could about this environment now, and I was too. We have to get a closer look. I think I see a herd of animals over there on that open plain. We still have to be cautious, Amy, but I will take us over and down within 500 feet of the ground and over to that side of the field where we can observe. When we got into position, we could see that these were a variation of bison. They were the same but slightly different in color and much larger. Their horns were huge, and an estimate in height we guessed was about 20 feet at the shoulder. We both agreed that this looked like a scene from Earth's Pleistocene era when giant mammals roamed the Earth. We both wondered what other animals were here. We soon found out there was another herd near here that looked like these prehistoric animals. Can't remember what they're called, but they were even taller and bigger. Because usually where there are herbivores, there are carnivores, and for now, we could only speculate. What we did notice was the gravity that we now were feeling quite impressively seemed to be about the same as Earth's, but slightly less. I'm going to lock us up in neutral here and test the air next. What do you think? Amy answered, "Are you ready to do that just yet?" "Sure, why not? If it is the same, we could get out of this can and explore outside for a while. What do you think about that?" "Sounds good," she said. "I guess I miss the fresh air, and hopefully it's good." "Are you sensing anything bad?" I asked. "No, not as far as imminent danger, but it's the unseen that worries me a little." "What, like bacteria, viruses?" "Yes, that and what we might bring here." "Well, we both have checked out clean, but at our last checkup, we're not carriers of anything, so I think the danger is probably ours. We'll need to be checked out when we return. If we are negative, then I would say the basic microorganisms are the same. We can also get certain samples to take back to examine closer, since we don't have the tools to do this ourselves here." "You're right," she said. "All I know is I need to get out of this can before we risk our lives again. I want to feel the wind in my face, and I want to feel normal for a while. It's a long way back, and anything can happen. I'm sure we were given carte blanche here because I think and feel we're supposed to do this," she answered. "I feel this way too. It's a weird feeling, overwhelming. You getting that too, are you?" "Yes, strange. It started a few minutes ago." "All right, then I'll do a test to see if it's breathable, and then we will scan the edges of this plane for predators first, just in case." This was something we were used to doing on Earth. If in remote hostile areas or on camping trips, you always check for signs or tracks and watched your back. "What's the temperature outside?" I asked. She answered, "It's 81 degrees. "Okay, here's how we'll work this. We don't know what the difference in pressure is, so when I tell you to equalize the pressure, and when that happens, we will hear that happen. I will then open the outside door of our air lock and take 1 or 2 breaths, then close the door, at which point I will know. If it's bad, then pump it out and repressurize it with our air, okay? Okay, my love, she answered, but do you realize that will take a couple of minutes to do, and you will be without a breathable atmosphere for a minute or two? Yes, I do, but that is a chance I'm ready to take. How about you? Just promise me that you won't leave me alone, please. I'll do what I can, you know that. We had installed a control to open and close the doors from the outside as well as the inside, mostly for security reasons on Earth. So we made sure that each of us remembered the code numbers to use, and it was a variation of pi, 314.777. Then, in a demanding way, she said, "Okay, kiss me first." I complied, and after hugging for a few more moments, I then sealed the inner door. We didn't think we would need anything else for the airlock system. We never knew we would be going through this, so I had to signal her with a banging on the door to equalize the pressure. And we did these signals through tapping that way. We heard a slight hiss, but not much of a change. I then opened the outer door and breathed in, and then nothing happened. Nothing bad anyway. When I took my 3rd and 4th breath, it seemed wonderful and so vibrantly fresh that I was stunned. I couldn't speak for a moment. She knocked on the door. I signaled her that it was okay, and I turned and opened the inner door. And the air whooshed into our cabin, and at that moment we both realized that this was the best thing that could have happened to us. What do you think? I asked. Oh my God, she shouted, that is the best air I have ever smelled or tasted, ever. Yes, it is, I said. Even in the Cascades, the air doesn't compare with this. It is pristine. I think we are going to be all right here. I hope we can stay for a while. Of course we can. We have a time limit, though, and that is if it all checks out. Let's turn off our life support, and we can leave the doors open and breathe normal, clean air for a change. So we shut down our life support to conserve it, and then stood there for a moment taking this in. This is going to have a cleansing effect on everything on board, just like after a rainfall. But even more so. Do you smell the ozone? She asked. Yes, and it'll freshen things up, I said. I didn't realize that our air was so bland, even with us breathing a mixture of purified air, and nothing on Earth could compare with this planet's sweetness as we breathed in the air. What's next? Do we scan for predators now? Yes, ma'am, and we will head over to that lake and set down where we know it'll be safe after we check the perimeter of this valley. Should we check all of our systems before we shut down to know where we stand? Good idea, I said. All I see while hovering here is we are depleting our batteries some, so let's deploy our solar panels for extra input since we'll be shutting down eventually. That was over on her side of the console, and she complied with a yes sir, then giggled at me. I saw then that she was happy as ever now, knowing that there was ground beneath us, something normal again. She knew we could rest and relax since now we would be out of danger from the craziness of space travel and from the dangers we went through. I was feeling that too. What we went through was so improbable that no one would believe us without the evidence we collected, and maybe not even then. There was a relief in her face and her demeanor now was content and smiling happily. We attended to the cameras and telescope, looking for any dangerous creatures that might be lurking in the shadows or at the edge of the forest that surrounded this gigantic meadow, which was more like a great plain. We had no idea of what they might be or look like. The prehistoric bison-looking animals didn't give us a second thought, and we believed that it was because they'd never seen anything like this before and we weren't a threat. Every once in a while they would look at our craft and without a second thought then continue with their grazing. It was as if we were looking at the prehistoric mammals from Earth's past. It was rather spellbinding. As we hovered, I stood in a doorway with a pair of binoculars and spotted a flock of birds as they were flying in circles. They were doing this in the open fields, probably looking for something to eat, I would reckon. Amy, aim your camera, put it on record, aim it at about 10 o'clock and tell me what you see. Got you. I see them, birds. They have 4 wings like a dragonfly, and there's a smaller flock to the left of them. They almost resemble a bug with feathers. As I scrutinize them, they look like birds, but so strangely different. Simply amazing. They look like blackbirds. She then asked, "Oh boy, we are going to have endless documenting to do here, aren't we?" "Sure seems that way, but there's a limit to what we can do and how much time we can spend here." "Understood," she replied. "We'll do all that we can. There'll be no way that they can say this is all a hoax." "That's for sure," I said, "especially when we return and land in this can. I guess this will be the presentation of a lifetime." We then kept our door open, which allowed us a small breeze into our stale-smelling environment, and proceeded to the lake area to land, and there we would finally get out and have a closer look. There was no reason now to worry about germs. If there was any kind of shite here, we were now in it. "Look at this lake. It's perfect. There's a creek that flows into it and has an outlet, and it looks as if the water's flowing into it is coming from that far mountain range with the snow caps." "You're not going to get gold fever, are you?" she said jokingly. "Now that you mention it, that is not a bad idea while we are here. Just rock samples, though, from another world would be a smart move. What do you think?" "Good thinking, my love. What they want is solid evidence. Let's give it to them." "Thank God I took some geology courses in college because it'll help here," I told her. "Look at the sky," she said. "The color is even deeper than we normally see back home, isn't it?" "Yes, it is. There's very little contamination or pollution here. I would suspect our skies back home would be a deeper blue too if it wasn't for man's stupidity." We flew over the herd and then touched down near the inlet stream and landed. Before I completely shut down, I checked our batteries to make sure that they were fully charged, since we would need them for startup again, and they were already maxed out. "We're good. I'm shutting down. Bring in our solar panels, please." "I'm on it," she replied. "Turn on our courtesy lighting, Colonel," I said jokingly. She laughed. "Already there," she said swiftly. "Imagine this, Amy. We are now camping on another world." I always said I would take you camping. What do you think about that? How you like me now? I started a little dance when she came over and jumped up and clamped her legs around my waist and gave me a big wet kiss that said, "My hero." Then she said, "Let's go down to the lake." Sure, why not? But we have to be careful. Remember, like in Florida, oh yeah, alligators. I giggled at her pronunciation. Yes, we have no idea what's in that water. We'll test it the way we do back home. I know what's on your mind, I said. And what's that, mister? As we climbed down the ladder, I said, a good soapy bath and perfume while skinny dipping? Is that about right? Yes, but you are forgetting something, she said. Nah, I know the rest, but it needs not be said, right? We'll see, she said coyly. I loved the way she talked to me when she didn't have a care in the world, or at least in this world. I'll go first, I said. Shall I say something as I set the first human foot down on this planet? I think you should, she replied. Okay, here goes. As I set the first foot on this planet, I am blessed with the prettiest ass in my face that I have ever seen on any planet as she was above me on the ladder. How's that? She laughed her ass off as she then jumped down and ran after me saying, "You funny jackass, come over here so I can spank you." I then let her, after a short time, catch me as I bent over and played the rest out. She smacked my displayed ass once, and I then forced her to kiss me as she played hard to get. After smooching for a while, we settled down in our joy and returned to serious investigation of our nearby habitat. First things first, I said. Okay, let's take a closer look at this lake. Its water was as clear as could be and alpine looking in nature. We walked over to the water. I picked up a big piece of driftwood and proceeded to slap the water near the shore, imitating an injuring or struggling animal. I knew that if there was any kind of crocodilian here, that a disturbance should draw attention within minutes. We would either see things escaping or hunting, and hopefully we would see it before it gets too close. But nothing happened except the scattering of small fish and what looked like brine shrimp. Then the next thing I did was a call that I was taught by the natives of Florida. It was an imitation of an alligator's call that we used to use to get alligators to come over to us, as trappers use the same technique. There was still no sign of gators or anything similar. So what do you think? She asked. Well, no predators, at least like the ones we know of. Did you see all those baby fish scatter when you slapped the water? Yes, I did, and the little crustaceans too. I think at this elevation we don't have anything to fear unless there are huge fish in here. Plus, the water is kind of cold. She said, it looks to me to be like an alpine lake back on Earth and just as clear. It seems it to me too, but if I go in there, I'm not going to be dangling my bait in there till I know it's safe for sure. Let's go over and have a look in the feeder creek and see what we can see. I want to check the structure of the bed of the creek and the wildlife there, and to see if it's a safer place to take a bath. Sound good? Yes, my dear, sounds good. We should lock our ship up, right? Thanks for reminding me, my baby. Let's do that right now. After we walked over about 500 yards to the creek's delta, Then, along the shoreline of the creek, which was on the average about 2 feet deep and a much safer place to bathe, as you could see anything coming at our position for about 100 yards, we would see the herd that was wandering slowly towards the lake behind us. These were the ones we had seen earlier. They had walked over for water. As I examined them, I knew they had come down here for water before, and their tracks looked like any bison or cattle prints, except they were 3 times as large. Look there. There are some birds on the shoreline ahead, and it looks like they are probing the mud for food. So, there are some predatory creatures even here, I said. I wonder what the scale of that is. Keep in mind, we could be on the menu. We could be somewhere on the food chain and maybe not on top. She said, they look like sandpipers. Yep, you know evolutionists back home are going to freak out. You know this, right? Yes, she replied. If there is a great deal of similarities, they are going to have their minds blown, and fundamentalists too. They're all going to be just as freaked out. You got that right. They're going to have some rethinking to do, that's for sure. Look, dragonflies, and listen. There's croaking. Sounds like tree frogs. Amy became aware of this new nature quickly, and I was studying the bed of the creek. The process and the geology of the rocks were comparable to Earth's rocks in any creek or river back home. But the croaking seemed way bigger or deeper, and we didn't know exactly where it was coming from, but we would find out sooner or later. The rocks in the water have little larvae underneath them, which I noticed as I picked them up. The wetness of the rock made it easier to figure out what they were. There were metamorphic rocks, weak foliated, non-foliated, and green stone, gneiss, lots of schist, granites, marble, quartzite, and the list goes on. There was nothing here that wasn't on Earth. These were the things that any gold miner would look for to find a good area. So there must be gold in all the heavy metals here too. And here I had nothing to really look with underwater or to work with. No shovel, no pan, no sluice. I thought, damn. What are you damming about? Amy shouted up from the creek. Nothing, my dear, but she really knew. Don't wander too far ahead. What do you see? She had taken off her shoes and was waiting while I looked at the life that was under the water and under the rocks. It looked the same as any of our creeks or rivers. I have seen and been in many times, and this was so familiar. Do you see any fish over there? I asked. Yes, small fry and finger sizes. That's all so far, and something that looks like a crawdad without large claws, but about a foot long. Well, try to stay away from those. If we are going to bathe, this spot is a better choice. We would be able to see anything coming at us on land or water. What do you think? I have to agree. It's a little colder than the lake water, but not too bad, she said. As we observed, we talked, and 15 minutes later I said, I wish I had a mask to look underwater. She then said, here, as she kicked water in my face, have a look. Then I returned the favor, and after a few exchanges, she then came upon me from behind, jumped onto my back as I fell in and immersing the both of us, then laughed as we had our first fun days in the outdoors. Let's walk up creek a little further. Giddy up, she yelled at me, and then you can tell me sweet things. I whinnied and snorted, playing along like her horse as she jumped onto my back. After a bit, we walked hand in hand. You are the love of my life, I said as I looked deep into her eyes for a moment. Then she smiled back at me. We walked, then while continuing Continuing our walk, we looked as we now looked at all we could in this paradise. Just the scenery made it hard to go back to the ship. As we walked, I told her the things a woman needs to hear. You know I love the way you cheer me up, and you have been right there with me when I really needed you to be, and not a complaint or a tear from you through all of this. And when most other women would have been freaking out at everything, you didn't. We just figured out the solution to each of the different problems we encountered, and as we did, you remained so cool. I love that about you. Well, after all, you know, I'm a Ukrainian girl, right? She was bragging in a nice, funny way, which left me an opening. Yes, I do, and you know I love your big Ukrainian feet too, right? Then she smacked me on the shoulder. I started to run from her, playing scared. Come back here. I'm not through with you. I ran back toward our ship with her in hot pursuit. When we got near the delta of the creek, I stopped and turned facing her, all calm, waiting for her to catch up, and then suddenly, to make it look real, I waited a moment for her to get close enough. Then I pretended there was something behind her with a shocked and scared look on my face, and then with that, I faked a yelling scream. I pointed behind her. I then turned quickly and ran as fast as I could toward the ship. I soon slowed down to let her pass me, then laughed at her fearful way of lifting those legs so high, and she knew then I was lying. I let her tackle me as she leapt onto me, and we rolled on the sandy shoreline. She was still playing angry at me now, knowing nothing was behind us. I then quickly reversed the hold and pinned her to the ground, and while holding her arms to the ground above her head, I forced her to kiss me as she moved her head back and forth in defiance, but soon she gave in. We kissed for a few seconds, then I noticed she was distracted. As I looked into her eyes, she was making a movement with them to get me to look above and behind her head. I thought she was giving me the same treatment, but then, after a few seconds, when I did look, there was a bison creature standing there, looking at us, within a few feet above us, staring down at us, and I instantly and instinctually pulled her up out of the way, and while backing up, pushing her along behind me as I faced it, moving slowly, now till we had some distance between us and it. We ran a few yards looking back, and we could see it was a calf, but standing there it looked like a full-grown buffalo. For a baby it was huge. Most of the herd walked around us unconcerned, but some were wary. The rest of the herd wasn't far behind, with about 30 members. As they walked around our craft heading for the water, I cringed for a moment, thinking how the baby could have easily crushed us underfoot. I was also cringing for another reason. As we walked in the direction of our ship, I motioned with my finger on my lips, whispering to keep whispering so we wouldn't draw attention. What do you think? Are we in danger? She asked. Not as long as we don't startle them, I said. Do you think they are heavy enough to topple our ship? She asked. She was reading my mind. These guys were huge. I was playing it off some. I don't know, they are pretty big. The landing pads of our ship, the way they are designed, gives us a maximum stability for its height. But these guys are huge. If they mark trees by rubbing, there is a possibility we could be in trouble. The ship could be mistaken for a tree or a tree stump, and that would be bad. Yes, she said, there would be serious damages that we might not be able to repair. To be a castaway here would assuredly mean we would never be found. After that was said, we squatted in the tall grasses quietly, watching them take their fill slowly, then walking away from our can back and out into the pasture of the valley. I was noticing there wasn't any threat in the water, and they seemed to not have a worry about drinking out of the lake. Should we go around them? Amy asked. Heck no, I said. Remember how lions and cats do on Earth in tall grasses? We would have to walk through too much of that. We stay here and wait till they pass and it is clear. Yes, you're right, she stated. If need be, the lake water was the best defense, and running in there away from a predator was all we had if there were any here, and hopefully not like tigers who loved water. They wandered along the shoreline and to our right, and then slowly moved back into the grassy fields that nourished them. And soon, far enough away, we could walk and talk normally and traverse that last 500 yards or so. So we ran for it. When we got there, we went up the ladder to our door. She was punching in our code as I watched behind us. Wow, that was a rush. Yes, it was. My adrenaline maxed out. Even the baby was huge. I thought we were looking at a fully grown animal for a minute. I sort of froze. We were not a threat, so they paid little attention to us, but I do think now they could have easily stomped us like roadkill if they wanted to. I would have to agree as she fumbled the code on the keypad. Let's get on board quick. We'll sit here and watch the scenery till it starts getting dark. We'll see what happens next. We seem to be safe now. Sounds like a plan, she said. We changed into our clean clothes, me in boxers and a t-shirt, and Amy in panties and a bra. I then broke out that bottle of rum we had stashed, and we sat in the doorway of our ship with our legs dangling out as we had a couple of shots while chasing it with a bottle of Pepsi, as we anticipated what we would do tomorrow. Amy, it feels like we died and went to heaven, doesn't it? In a way it does. I have no worries right now. It's simply amazing. The herd was wandering further away toward the edge of the forest, and we were definitely out of danger now. If heaven is a choice of how we want it to be, I would want it to be like this with you. I couldn't think of a better thing to do than this and explore God's universe. Having said that, she put her arms around my back and chest, clasping her hands together at my right shoulder, and laid her head in the nape of my neck and said, I love you so much I couldn't stand to be without you. I feel the same way. I'm totally happy and content, even though we are billions of miles from nowhere. My home could be anywhere as long as I am with you. With that said, she kissed me on the neck and said, pass that bottle. I'll have another shot. All right, big girl, here you go. Have you noticed that there aren't any mosquitoes? You know what? Now that you mention it, yes. But that's a good thing, right? Something else I noticed also now that you mention it is there really aren't any weeds. You know, like stickers and hitchhiker plant types. This place, so far, is reminiscent of the description of the Garden of Eden in the beginning, yes? Yes, it's odd and so nice, she stated. Why do you think it's like that, my love? I'm not sure. There seems to be predation, but on a smaller, limited scale. That's what it seems like. Should we be worried? she asked. Well, let's stay alert. We haven't seen much, and near the temperate zone here, things might be different, just like back home. There might be more activity at night with more animals, but we don't know. Even here, though, we need to be alert. Alert. Getting a buzz, my love, she asked. Yep, I feel fine. How about you? I feel great, and look, the sun is starting to set over the mountain range. It is so beautiful. Look at the colors. It's amazing. It appeared to be slightly larger, and it was spectacular, with streamers of light coming off of it through far distant clouds, refracting colors with a slight hue of red to it. The distant clouds seemed to make its redness across its surface striped with different hues of the spectrum from this sun and from the clouds at different levels in the atmosphere. It was awesome and also different. And now Kepler E's moon was rising, which looked nothing like ours. Shall we watch the stars tonight, she asked. I think we will for a while. Let's see if we can pick out where we came from, and while we wait for total darkness, I'll put some music on. What do you think? Yes, please do. I put on Father a Day, Father a Night by Manfred Mann. As I came back, I told her the rest would be on shuffle. That's quite appropriate, isn't it? I thought you'd like it, and yes it is. She then asked, if there were people that seen us here but hiding right now in the distance, what do you think they would be thinking right now? Hearing this music right now, my love, I would think, depending on their sophistication, that they would be fascinated and curious to know more, and I hope it sounds divine to them and not something to fear. Why do you ask? I don't know, just a thought that popped up, I guess. Probably because of the music. It's always been either a sword or a forced culture on the conquered, right? In most cases, yes, unless there is a union of collaboration. Well, I hope that the beauty of our music would shine through and calm them if there are others here like us watching us. Yes, but what if there was a danger of infecting them because they are friendly? We could inflict harm to them just as the Native Americans fell to the Europeans and their diseases. An alien race might be just as vulnerable, and vice versa. We could be vulnerable. Well, what about our bathing in this water, breathing the air? There are living creatures here, and when they die there is bacteria, there has to be, and I would assume those are universal. Plus, creatures eat in order of the food chain. We'll have to be on guard while we're here. That's all we can do, I said. You bring up some good points, Amy. Tomorrow we search out bison crap. Really? She said, somewhat puzzled. Yes, it will answer many questions. After all, we are explorers, right? But why? To see what they eat and to observe any bugs that are attracted to it. We haven't seen many yet, and to know what they are like. An observation is better than nothing. Okay, you can do that while I clean things around here, okay? Sure, my love. I need to find out if those things are universal. I wouldn't mind coming back here in the future. With a concerned look on her face, she brought this up again. We have been inoculated for all of the serious diseases, and we are healthy. We won't be hurting any living creatures, right? True, that may keep us safe. I don't know about them from us, from our bugs. I wish we had a microscope to see those hidden questions, and I can think of a lot of other tools we lack. Heck, who could have known this was even possible? All I can say is there might be a higher power involved, and I hope he has it covered. Let's hope all these things are covered. Okay, you're right, we shouldn't worry about it. Not from everything we know right now, right? Right, she said. When you said honeymoon, who would have thunk? I mean, thought. Lol, now I have a buzz. Just ease your mind. I don't think we have much choice but to stop here, do you? This stop was necessary in many ways. I'm just not sure of which way yet. We stayed up and watched the sky for a few hours and talked more. It was the most memorable night we ever had. The constellations were different from here. One or two were recognizable, but that was it. The Milky Way looked the same. I'm sure it was slightly different, but without a picture from one place to the other to compare it, it was hard to tell. I took some pictures with our scope later to see about that later. So now a voice comes into my head as I'm remembering all of this. And here's what I got. All of what you have done and accomplished was inspired by me. Now you know for sure. There was that voice again. This time I turned to look into the darkness and saw a tall man standing there in white, and his face was so brilliant I could not bear to look. I bowed my head away from his brilliance, and I said, I never thanked you for this or for Amy, but I am now. With many overdue praises, I thank you so much. I'm gonna miss her. For a moment I thought I was still on Kepler E, so thank you. He said, keep watching. I have a task for you later. I knew where I was now, definitely. Next, Chapter 22, Day 2.